The migration crisis that we have seen with what is happening in the Middle East, especially that particular picture of that little boy found on the beach, it sent shockwaves. It brings out sometimes the best of people and also the worst of people. We need lots more dialogues across different mindsets among people from very different parts of the world, from different backgrounds, from different contexts. And it's okay to agree to disagree. Dialogue, respect, understanding. We can get this across, I think we are on the right path. We were trying to push is for children to be talking to each other but also listening, active listening, really try to understand their perspectives.
His father over years all he was his girlfriend.
Getting these kids on the virtual system is quite easy because they're all savvy. But interestingly, with the South Africans, we actually had to teach them how to set up an account, passwords, so you could see a huge divide there as well.
But as soon as I got into it and I got to log in, from there it was simple enough for them to use. They could click on where they wanted to go to which community, and then they pick up quickly.
We do like pre-assessment to see what their perspectives are on international global issues. Usually we do it for 6 weeks. We work with the schools and then with the teachers. And then we do a post-assessment to see how they have changed.
Good response came for the game assessment. It was a positive impact which they were actually going through when they were playing these games. That was fun for all of them, and I was very happy to see the data about the mindfulness and the compassion.
What we would like to now do is to scale this up, that this becomes part of curriculums in schools.
I'm not going to speak.
You have to try this. Oh, how did you do it the first time? Yeah, like that.
Hey!
Yay!
There's a lot of tension in the world right now, and I think it's really easy to just assume that others are your enemy. And just by meeting the other kids in this workshop, I've realized that you never really just assume because someone belongs to culture or country that they're different than you.
They're also really friendly. They ask us about Islam, why we wear hijab, what is about, and they ask us a lot. And they're really friendly, talkative.
They're open-minded.
Yeah.
They like sing and dance and makes us happy.
This experience alone has been mind-shifting for my students and for myself, and I just think it's a great first step towards more of a global citizenship, more of a global community.
The making of the film itself was part of the whole curriculum exercise because it's a learning by doing. Kids within 2 days have produced a great film. And I said, hey, we have done well.
Kamalokunye, Indres no more, Ewe Kalukungama Mini, Kamalokunye, Indres no more.
So this was the program in a nutshell and what we've done in past couple of years. I would now like to invite Garuba for the next presentation.
Thank you very much. A very good afternoon to all of you, and I hope we are trying to make this session interesting so that we don't doze off in this post-lunch session. My name is Garima Babbar and I head programs for South Asia for Adobe Systems. I'm sure when it talks about creativity, design, digital, Adobe tops the list. At least I think so. And I'm sure, I'll ensure that you also agree with me when I start showing you what we are trying to do when it comes to building skills of students in digital and in creativity. Some of our products, including Creative Cloud, PDF, in fact, we are popularly known as a PDF company. And Photoshop, of course, it's become a verb, you know, that everybody in schools, in colleges, everybody is using our tools. Therefore, when we talk about transformation, and the topic that was given to us today was, you know, beyond the four walls of the classroom. And what I understand that if you have to teach students of what was taught yesterday, you rob them of tomorrow. And that's precisely being in the field of education for a long time. We all do not want to adhere to the same practices, same old obsolete practices, which probably our parents went through, and we don't want our children to go through that. So we devised this program called Adobe Digital Disha. Disha means direction. And while we are talking about India on the transformation journey in the digital era, what are the skills that we are trying to give to our students today so that they feel empowered to face the future of workforce tomorrow? Can I please have the video, please? This is a short video that we had actually created when we started doing multiple pilots.
Creativity to me means self-expression. It means innovation. It's something that's germane to all of us. We're born with creativity. We believe everyone has a story to tell. And Creative Cloud offers them applications, learning, community, connections with others in order to tell their stories. Adobe Spark is a really easy to use web and mobile application. I decided to spend some time at this municipal school in Ampevi in Bombay to see how they interact with the product Adobe Spark. How do they tell stories? What difficulties do they have? And what's incredibly inspiring is that although these kids come from very, very underprivileged backgrounds and have very little available to them, they responded so positively to Spark and have created stories that they've published.
When you come to a country like India, I think creativity is all the more important given the kind of youth we have in our country. We are working very closely in the country on programs like the Adobe Digital Technology Academy as well as the Adobe Digital Disha program, wherein we partner with some of the biggest names in the country. And our mandate is clear. We want to foster creativity all across. We want to improve the digital skill sets within these institutions, and all of it, of course, to also improve the employability quotient for the country. Under this program, we are providing Adobe Spark Premium free of cost. Disha means direction. We hope to reach about 1 million students and educators by the time we hit the year 2020.
I had a very great experience with Adobe Spark, and this platform gave me huge advantage to do my assignments, to do projects, and to prepare pages, posts and videos side by side. We had 3 sections under Adobe Spark. One was Adobe Post, the other was Adobe Page, and then there was Adobe Video. So basically I created a page with Adobe Spark, and this page was all about Marvel Cinematic Universe.
These kids have a sense of accomplishment. They can stand out on the world stage and compete with anybody in the world because they'll be able to use their ideas, their creativity, their imagination and tell a story about themselves.
That's our program, Adobe Digital Cha. And I'm sure some of you witnessed the MOU signing that we had yesterday, the government of Andhra Pradesh, where we will be offering Spark to about 250 to 500 schools. And we really want to make a difference in the entire education learning system of today's schools, where we are not only impacting the pedagogical difference, but also the learning outcome of the students. How does this work? I think that's a very interesting point which most of the people have approached me. So Spark has 3 applications: post, page, and video. When it comes to digital learning, the students no longer have to hunt for images at different websites or different sources. So everything is available through artificial intelligence in one tool, in one application itself. They can create their own videos, and with the help of videos, the teachers can actually create their lesson plans. They can actually substitute for teacher absenteeism. The best practices of the teachers can be captured. And on the student learning side, the students can actually enhance their project-based learning. So essentially, with education and skill development into perspective, we developed this program, and there are activities that we have created, sample activities which educators and students can refer to, and they can make the entire journey of learning interesting. So that's my thought on what we should do when it comes to boundaries beyond the classroom. Because learning is not just confined inside the classroom. Actual learning begins when we start applying it in our daily life. In higher education also, I would encourage students to write into us, share their experiences, how they find Spark useful. They can create their CVs, they can create their portfolios. So it's no longer about marks that they receive, but it's also about the skills that they have acquired while being in the higher education. So these are some of my thoughts which I would like to discuss with my fellow panelists today, and look forward to your views and your opinion as well. Thank you very much. I now request Manoj to please share the insights of the beautiful Rubika University with us.
Very good afternoon. My name is Manoj Singh, and I head a group called Rubika Group, which is in design. But today I'll be speaking about our chain of schools that we have in a city called Pune. The school is named Anisha Global. Can I have the... So I thought I'll just share what we do at this school, and you'll be able to see how we have taken this approach. We are a Microsoft Showcase school, so we use technology from very early, from about 6 years. The students are taken to the world of coding and simple things like Scratch, Alice, C programming as they move along from class 1 to 10. I got this inspiration from Future Schools initiative, which was going on in Singapore. And IDA, Infocom Development Authority of Singapore, they had launched a scheme called Make Singapore Intelligent by 2015. And what they wrote is here, from teacher-centric, make it student-centric. From learning in the classroom, take it beyond classroom. Didactic learning, collaborative learning, reliance on textbooks, reliance on real life, local learning, global learning. And I was part of that project, and we thought that we should make some localization in Indian context, and that's what I'm here to share with you. So we began with making the school as one-to-one computing from class 1. So every child has a computing device. They are given a tablet from 1 to 4, and from class 5 onwards they have a laptop, which was the first thing that we did. We believe in a real-time collaboration. So a lot of things, a lot of learning that happens between schools to schools, country to country, classroom to classroom, or peer group learning, or faculty to faculty is actually a real time. We introduced this farm, which is actually the pictures that you're seeing all are from schools. And this was the approach that we began with. This is called iFarm. So every child has to be actually participating in farming. And this was done because we introduced bioinformatics from class 8. And the whole curriculum was built along with the curriculum of the board. So we follow CBSE, for those who are from India. We follow Cambridge, and we also have IB. And this was embedded with the curriculums that the school offers. So iFarm is where, if you see, we do vertical gardening, hydroponics, sometimes weird experiments, fogponics, and children from class 1 till A level, they have to compulsorily spend some time, compulsorily in a week in the farm. So the entire activity is done there, and as they grow up, from standard 8, they move into digital platforms. Since I head Rubica Group, and we are known for design, gaming and animation, we operate from France and Canada and India, we thought we'll take it to the school platform. So we have Minecraft subscription for all the students, and children love it. The projects that are defined are real-time. So I'll give you an example. Our school is based in a township which is about 450 acres. And as a game designer, when they have to deal with something like environment art, they actually take that township and they draw that art. So that becomes real play. If they have to design the level plays, they will again refer it to the campus where the school is based. If they have to design a cybercrime-based game, the same city, but they will create a script or storytelling based on the environment art that they have produced. So be it concept art, level designs, environment art, or game design, they actually participate in all. Then Rubica, because we have a lot of faculties come in, so they play a very important role. And the mini robot that you see here is India's first social companion robot, which is made by a company called Emotex. Emotex is a social, emotionally intelligent robot. It's a company called Emotex, and we partnered with them, and the idea was two. One was to tell the children at very early age that you are going to live in an era where you'll have interaction between men and machine. So they started understanding this robot interacts with children of age group from 4 to 13. And it can talk to you like I am doing right now for almost 25 minutes. It can play with the child, it sits with the child, it dances with the child. The best thing is it can also take certain classes. It doesn't replace the teacher. It comes into the classroom with the teacher. The second version that's coming up, and we'll be releasing it very soon, it has a camera here in the neck. If you smile, it talks to you further on the subject. If they find you boring, means you're not getting engaged, it'll shift the topic. Okay? So we've tried to get close to the emotions as much as possible, and there is a Miko lab in the school. We call it Miko. And the second objective was that let's teach AI at very early age. Okay? And that was our major objective. So how do we teach? We built certain SDKs. It's given to the students, and they have to now learn how to develop dialogue graphs, how to bring emotions, how to create actions, movements with this robot. And as they move into A level or AS level, they actually go to the company and they do what we call research approach. So this year we sent 2 of our students to a hospital based in Bombay. And we were to design a robot, which is Miko, for for autistic children. Okay. It's a social robotics for autism. And the children spent about 3 to 4 months interacting with the doctors and observing how children with autism actually behave. Okay. And they learned that it's not just about coding, it's much beyond that. Okay. That's what we do in AI robotics in this. This is the real lab. Since inception, we have an electronics lab, and I took the help of my PhD guide who headed at that time IIT Delhi, and the man who made India's first supercomputer. And we agreed that if you have to teach robotics, it cannot just happen by bringing Lego to the classroom or any such tool. You have to teach them about IT, you have to tell them about electronics, and it has to be seen from the interdisciplinary perspective. So that's what happened here. The cycle that you see in the picture is made by children, wherein children from age group of 14 to 16, they participate. This is a cycle which runs on battery, solar and electric, controlled by a tablet. It has a sensor. it has a Fitbit machines, and with one cycle, they have lots to learn. Of course, Lego you will see, and they've also designed a tablet. Thanks to Microsoft, they wanted to see our farm, and they have an event called Skypathon. So our children had an opportunity to speak to Anthony Salcito, and all that wanted to see was, are you really doing the farming? Does it really excite the children? And this is the day where we showed them. So what happens at Anisha, self-directed learning is what we promote. Game-based learning, which is absolutely project-based, learner-centric, and this is what we call classroom of the future. We build these tables. These tables have 32 touch points and 32 trigger points, which means as you touch, 32 children can play with this table at one go, and you can still have 32 responses. So imagine if I'm standing to a wall like this, I could have 32 subjects being taught in one go simultaneously. Okay? And this allows you to go into differentiated learning. This also allows you to go into collaborative learning. And there is a tool wherein I can work it like there were 4 computers, and we can define our tasks, which could be different at the same time. They start fun with instruction, and I can go on. So when we thought of this Future Schools at India project with Anisha, the first concern was that how are our teachers equipped with what we call baseline ICT program? And I've been part of Singapore education system for pretty long. We had this issue even in Singapore. So we created something called baseline ICT skills program, wherein every child and every student has to undergo this program so that we know that there's a base to which we can work on. Simple things like Cybernia. It's a game which teaches you about cybercrimes. And then comes learning a move. For those who go to Singapore, or if you intend to go anytime in future, kindly ask about learning trails that are going on in Singapore. Learning trails are where the students will take the mobile phones and they go to spots where history is revived. So I'll give you an example. There's a place called Clarke Quay, which is a very big social spot these days, but that's the place where Singapore was bombarded during Second World War. As you move with the mobile phone and you hit a particular spot, it will tell you, welcome to World War Zone 2. As you keep moving, you go to a particular spot and it will suddenly flash the video where you will actually see what happened during Second World War. Okay. So it is location-based content that is triggered exactly on the location where history took place. And you'll be happy to know that we have done about 50 such trails for Singapore government. We are doing the same in the school. These were some of the things that we do. And I strongly believe, I'll just tell you about a project which is this year given to our students. It is a collaboration between Rubika as the university and Anisha Global School. We are building a video game for blind and visually impaired people. Now, as it sounds, you're developing a video game for blind and visually impaired people. It's really a tough task. To think how a blind or visually impaired person thinks, how do they hear? You have to design sound, not video. And I hope that next year, if I'm here, I'll be able to share with you how the game takes place. Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Okay, moving to this side of the stage, I'm John McIntosh, and I'll warm up this stage for Kevin in a few minutes. I'm the Vice Dean of the School of Creative Arts at Shanghai Tech in Shanghai, China. For years before that, I was the chair of computer animation and visual effects at the School of Visual Arts in New York. And literally for 20 years, I was engaged in training essentially production artists, artists that could enter the entertainment industry. And within that 20-year period, we placed a tremendous amount of young talent within an industry that was growing rapidly and growing extensively both nationally and worldwide. But my goal as an educator was always provide my students with the ability to have careers. And subsequently, as I kind of wrapped up my experience in New York, I had the opportunity to come to Shanghai, China, to work with a tech university, a research university. And my goal there was to essentially shift my gears completely, and instead of educating artists to become part of the entertainment industry, was to actually start focusing on artists and scientists and how they could work together to both do better research for their scientific projects and for educational purposes. And so subsequently in the last year we've established a new curriculum and essentially a one-of-a-kind program in the visual arts, but instead of being visual arts entertainment industry, it's visual arts for the scientific industry. And largely what we were trying to do was to explore the practice, and always within any major university, and as many of you know, within most technology universities, the idea of an art program is just, why would you do that? You know, we're considered the soft power. We have no merit within most technical universities. Why would you do that? It's just a distraction. Well, our belief was, and the belief of our president of our university was essentially that any world-class university, any primary education that's worth long-term investment has to be inclusive of the arts. And for those of us that are academics, that would more or less point to the idea of liberal arts. But in this case, we're with the fine and performing arts that we've brought to this campus. And essentially our specific interest was both enriching the experience and advancing the knowledge of the very highly educated scientists that were working at this university, and to support their research as they both were trying to basically produce excellent, to document the work as their research was going on. So historically, the intersection of art, science, and representation has been found in the medical and scientific industries, but only or mostly produced for either the press or for print media or online at this point. So today the intersection we see that will happen most dramatically will be both in AR and VR projects, and this is where we come into some really interesting challenges within education, science, and the arts. One of the biggest problems that we face is the skill sets are so intensive, especially in developing accurate and extremely well done VR projects. The skill sets are so accurate and require so much training that no scientist has the time to do that. Scientists will generally output whatever is the default setting for whatever application they're using to visualize. And that's all the time they have to do. So the idea of having highly trained artists working in the scientific industry or working as part of scientific research is, while unheard of, is very contemporary and will become something that becomes prevalent in the next few years. It's not that the artist is going to be a scientist. The artist will not be a scientist. The artist will be a collaborator, much in the same way that we would set up a collaboration team for a visual effects in a movie industry. So essentially, we look at, from a creative standpoint, we look at this collaboration as a bypass or a second or third generation of what the entertainment industry has established for visual effects creation. And that's a hard sell to scientists, by the way. So if you actually are talking to scientists or engineers and you say you want to use a model from the visual effects industry, the room goes almost as silent as this room is right now. So essentially, but the truth of the matter is that the most advanced visual applications, the most advanced technologies for visualizing are only in one place. And it's not in science, it's in the entertainment industry. So if you were, as a scientist, wanted to visualize something, you wanted the very best person on earth to help you visualize it, you would go to Weta in New Zealand. You would go to Peter Jackson. And he would visualize this for you in a way that would be not only a blockbuster entertainment, but it would be highly accurate and highly successful. So the idea that we can still manufacture, or the scientists can still generate information by offset printing or even 3D prototypal printing is almost ludicrous. Except by history and by prejudice, the scientific community will not deal with 3D information. This is an interesting prejudice that will change within the next few years. So as I was saying, the artist's perspective, while not scientific, really can help visualize very complex data in a way that no scientist or engineer has ever even comprehended. And that's not because the artists are more brilliant. They are, in many ways, artists are always more brilliant. But if in this case, they actually are trained on applications that are far more capable of dealing with complex data. So essentially, our goal was to change from an art department to create a center for scientific representation and data visualization. And our mission statement was really simple. We proposed to make a significant advancement in the representation of scientific research and a significant advancement in data visualization. We did this sharing our statement with MIT and a group of scientific researchers working out of MIT, and we were also developing some collaborative programs with Scripps in Los Angeles. So our mission statement was that we will establish a center dedicated to expanding and providing visual and design solutions for representing science and engineering and visualizing data clearly and accurately for communication, education, publication, and advancing research. Now, the idea of that is really that we would not only be using traditional media and online media to expand ideas, but to really create visual VR experiences that would allow many researchers to, in fact, share their research and to share in real time their research. Now, for many of us that come from as an art background, the idea of working collaboratively in a film is commonplace, but working as independent artists or as an independent research, researchers will tend to collaborate. So it's part of their training that they actually will exchange ideas and they will work in teams. And within the campus at Shanghai Tech, we have collaborative arrangements worldwide that go from Cambridge to other countries, to Moscow, to the United States. And so for them to collaborate on their research in a real time really gives them a tremendous ability to accelerate both their research and their conclusions. We decided we would educate and provide visualization research, and this goes more for training artists to the extent of reapplying creative skills to scientific needs. And that goes from illustrators to animators to visual effects artists to all those really high-end applications and all those high-end skills that the film industry uses. They are desperately needed within new research. So we have developed a team where we wanted to set up a production pipeline, much like the same as an entertainment industry, in which as scientists were doing research, every scientist works in an iterative fashion. They work test, repeat, usually test, fail, repeat. But every time they test, they have to document. And so essentially what we're looking to do is to develop systems and best practices to be able to visualize each iteration. And the only way to functionally do that for a researcher is to in fact have an artist or have a visual artist work with them simultaneously with their research. So, and again, going to the parallel of the entertainment industry, we know for years now that successful visual effects films are done when the visual effects artists are at the start of the film, not at the end of the film. So in research using visual effects or usual visual information, we propose that in fact the visual artist be involved, the visual researcher be involved from the beginning, not just at the end. So essentially we are developing a number of software protocol. We're a computer science program as well at Shanghai Tech, and we're developing a number of software applications that will allow researchers to, in real time or at quicker time, do quick visual tests to document their process. And finally, as a research center, and especially at a research university, we feel obliged and honored to honor the legacy of scientific and medical illustration. And while the leading challenges of representing and visualizing complex images, there is a deep history of scientific and medical illustration that is rich and is the forefront of what we now propose to do. So we will have a collection, we are developing a collection of scientific and medical imaging. which is quite beautiful, to be honest. The benefits of this kind of research is multiple, but in many ways from the individual artist, it lets artists engage into a different industry as opposed to being trapped as an artist into the entertainment industry. You actually can become more a viable player or a viable contributor to research in a scientific university. And essentially, it broadens the skill set of many of the artists that we've produced, and universities and colleges like Rubica has produced highly trained professionals that are, at this point, pretty much only serve the entertainment industry. We believe that the scientific industry and the need for scientific representation is critical and is at a great point of merging. So essentially our center will provide the instruction and research to the researchers as well as how to work with artists and to how to better acquire data for their experimentations. The center's principal investigators will complete their individual research and identify very specialized imaging systems for that acquired data. With our expected outcomes, what we expect right away, we've seen it in our initial experiments, has been scientists and engineers are juried or they're judged in their success by the number of papers they submit and papers that are published. And in this instance, we've already seen a threefold increase in publications from scientific papers. Not because the research is better, although it's good, we give them much better pictures. So if you give better entertainment always works, by the way. It's just so we give much better pictures, much better graphs. Those graphs are easier to read. They're easier to, by the way, they're developed in all standard tools. There's no high training in that. These are designers that are designing for information. And so essentially, all of a sudden, you have really pretty drab illustrations that are coming, all of a sudden, aren't drab at all. They're quite clear in the information they're trying to express. And we've had a threefold increase in publication of paper in 1 year. And much better graphics worldwide. So that's my talk for this today, and we'll look forward to your questions. So Kevin is up next. Kevin's up.
Us that entertainment always works, and as we're sitting here reading these monitors, there is confetti from the magician last night, and it makes really raises the level of anxiety of how much we should perform for you all in the audience to see this magician. We have to make things appear and disappear, and that's just such a high bar. My talk is on critical literacy for what I'm calling or what many have called a post-human world. I just want to pause first and just thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm really pleased and honored and humbled to be among you, and excited to be part of these conversations that traverse so many places, and so many cultures, and so many different commitments all coming together around a commitment to education. The subtitle of the talk is When Reading, Seeing, and Being Are Machine Saturated. So we've had sessions on implications for AI, for big data analysis and analytics for marketing. At least that's been implicit in a number of sessions. We've had sessions on implications for research, implications of big data for privacy and policy. What about the question of implications of big data for curriculum and pedagogy, including helping children develop critical thinking about data? If you forget the rest of the talk, I want to just sort of leave you with a question that's meant to provoke, and that question is, if adults believe in child-centered learning, then why do they hold all the big data? So the question is, who has big data, and what does it mean to come into literacy of big data, and why might that be important? So let's start thinking about reading and writing images together. I want to think about this as a form of, obviously, reading and writing with critical literacy. We might think from a sort of propaganda perspective, we might look at this image and we might think about how this image appeals to our strong emotions, how it attacks opponents, how it responds to audience needs and values. These kinds of things that we teach in school about propaganda and propaganda analysis, how it simplifies information, how it uses this word invaders to describe immigrants coming into the country. So we might think all those things, we might analyze the image and we might analyze the text, and we might wonder about what meanings we could make of that. Yet, this example of social media was found in the database of more than 3,500 examples of propaganda that was placed on Facebook by Russian troll factories as part of their effort to sow discord in the 2016 U.S. presidential campaign. Stop All Invaders was a fake social media account created by Russian agents pretending to be U.S. political activists. So it's interesting to think here that this Stop All Invaders was, most of the action in this particular case is not on the surface of the image, is not in the text, is not in the image, it's in what you don't see. It's what's been present through the activity of humans and non-humans together. You might note the irony of Stop AI as the acronym for Stop All Invaders. I can't help but think that was intentional. So you have some post-human troubles. Post-human troubles with thinking about our education, issues in education. And so I've listed some here that are on my mind, and there are many others. First of all, functions of images. I think I'm going to grab that other mic. I'm having a little... Is this on? Okay, thank you. The only problem with this kind of mic, I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, and every time you hold a mic like this in Nashville, you sing karaoke, so I will really try not to do that. Some of the post-human troubles that we're thinking about are the function of images and text today for students and for all of us is changing from representation to activation. So it's not just that images and text point to something or represent something, they do things. So agency and images and text, the activity of reading is transforming. Much of what happens via AI is not really visible to study. We've already talked about that. Issue of visibility in education. Countercultural interpretations by machines are not really at issue. Countercultural interpretations are something that is particularly human that people learn to do over long periods of time. Training sets for machines reveal the positions of the trainers. Training sets reveal racial, geographical, historical, and socioeconomic positions of their trainers. They're not neutral. Much of human action is effective rather than rational. So this is that issue. I think it's kind of interesting that John's talking about this, and many have talked about art in this session, right? And this sort of meeting place of art and science. And so much of what we see in terms of interaction with text is being boosted in its affective sort of import. And then machines read, see, and create identities differently than humans. So you note they're not arguing to get rid of AI, but what I'm arguing is that AI and an interpretation of AI should be part of schooling. Because if machines are reading and seeing and creating identities different than humans, and they're prolific, that this is a continuous, ubiquitous kind of activity for schooling, then why would teachers be the only ones doing it? Why would advertisers be the only ones doing it? It is true that students are already believers in algorithms in one way or another. All of their beliefs might not be entirely accurate, but they are believers. Students from Hong Kong and the UK were participants in a research project by Rodney Jones, who's a researcher in the UK, and they were tasked with exploring and recording their own digital literacy practices. They engaged in algorithmic inventories, asking questions like, how do you think the algorithm works? The point of the study was to engage students in representing their own theories about algorithms and considering how do they know what they know. So students came up with quite a range of theories that are quite interesting. They saw, of course, the algorithm as an agent. That seems pretty spot on. We sometimes believe the algorithm has a mind of its own, is how it was described by students. That's kind of interesting. Algorithm is authority. We sometimes believe that the algorithm is smarter than us. The algorithm as adversary. We believe the algorithm is something we can cheat or hack. So they sort of sense their own activity as a kind of in relationship to the algorithm. The algorithm is a conversational resource. We think we can use algorithms to talk to others. The algorithm as an audience. We believe that algorithms are watching or judging us. And even, and this is one of my favorite, the algorithm is an oracle. We sometimes believe that algorithms are magic. We might look at this image as an interesting activity, and we're thinking about interpretation and reading. What might we say about this image? How might we interpret it? I'll give you a little bit of verbal framing for it. The title of this image is An Angel. So that shaped your interpretation somewhat, I tell you that, right? We might note that the color, the surrealism, we might think about the dreaminess of this image. We may see more than one figure in this image. We might wonder why the artist produced something of an angel that wasn't particularly luminescent, maybe a little bit hazy. We may wonder about that large white block of material, grayish white block, what it might signify. We might start to imagine the artist's intentions here, or what the artist might be referencing, or perhaps even its allusion to some other art or some other part of culture. But what's interesting about this image is it's part of a set of images called Adversarial Evolved Hallucinations by Trevor Paglen. Trevor Paglen trained two AIs to work together in communication with one another. The first AI was trained on a thematic corpus of irrational things, omens, portents, monsters, dreams, much of which didn't come from images at all. They came from novels without any direct relationship to images in reality. The second, drawing AI, communicated with first AI, it was trained in particular to see Freudian dream symbols or wonders. The trained AIs cycled back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and hallucinated. And that's the representation that we have here. So the relationship of this particular image to what we might say the world of art, the world of human art, is very distant. It's very unique. It's an odd relationship. Paglen said, he says, over the last decade or so, something dramatic has happened. Human visual culture has become a special case of vision, an exception to the rule. The overwhelming majority of images are now made by machines for other machines, with humans rarely in the loop. If we are surrounded by images interpreted by machines, and increasingly images made by machines, and if machines have capacities to interpret images that are not like those of humans, that have limitations and strengths and scales other than those of humans, and if these interpretations have consequences for humans, shouldn't we then include something of this secret knowledge in schooling for global citizenship? Here, I think, are just some suggestions of some new critical questions that we might ask about visual or image interpretation. What is special about human interpretation and vision? If you created a training set to teach a machine to see your social group, what would you put in it? And what forms of everyday surveillance are operating around us, both online and offline? And how might we be aware of them? Let's move on from the idea of the image and text interpretation to the idea of identity interpretation and production through AI. Let's start with a very simple example. Here's some data from my ad settings by Google. You should check on your own ad settings. Follow the link. You might even do that right now if you're getting bored. You can look on your laptop and check out who it is that you're being made to be. It's a great example of how identities are created through AI. These data are collected by Google and its partners. By Google's information, they explain that they are collecting these data to make the ads they serve me more useful to me. So Google says it's doing me a favor. In fact, from the marketing perspective, Google is relentless in doing me favors. It works on my behalf nonstop. Google is in love with me, or at least in love with making my time more useful. These data include all kinds of things, my current search queries, previous search activity, my previous interactions with ads, the types of websites I visit, the time of day, types of mobile app activity on my device, and so on. So by Google's estimation, some of the things that characterize me is that I'm between 55 and 64 years old. I like cheapo air, or I've used cheapo air, Android apps, and American football, which was kind of an odd one for me. I don't know when that search came up because I probably watch one American football game a year. So in my case, these data give some good information and what you might think of as some poor information. But even that idea of good information and poor information is sort of a bad categorization because it's not how the AI works. It's just information, things done. So what does it mean about me? That's an open question. They're not necessarily mistakes, they're just data. And they're not data that are really particularly analyzed, they're just data that are given and given categories. As a social scientist and theorist, what's most important here is that what's being created is a society that first constructs individuals through diverse metadata signatures, and second, amplifies that diversity. Let me say that one more time. What's being created is a society, not in whole, but in part, that first constructs individuals through diverse metadata signatures, and second, amplifies that diversity. Why is diversity amplified? What's at stake in amplifying that diversity? The stake in the amplification of diversity could be to better serve people. Google and everyone else wants to make our lives better, easier, and more efficient. Yet at the same time, this purpose is certainly the marketization and the policing of everyday life. This is content about everyday social life that children should be taught. This is a representation of change, the change that happened with Facebook in terms of how Facebook moving things up to the feed more often. And you can sort of see in terms of having something come into the feed more often, commenting and sharing and reacting to a post rather than passive activity like clicking and watching were privileged by this adaptation. So the slide on the right represents how one company picks up on this change. So what you have is as people's behaviors are changing, as Facebook is shaping the placement of objects in the feed, then marketing companies are coming online to really focus on how does marketing happen, how might they better market into these changes in social media. So this is advice given to companies by this company that serves companies using social media. They say, focus on content that connects like-minded people, post content that naturally creates meaningful interactions, activate niche communities through Facebook groups. So the posting and meaningful interaction and niche community are not just activities that people are doing in the world, they're activities that are linked to marketing, and they're activities that are linked to particular stances with respect to both corporations and to information. We could see that marketing is moving quickly into the realm of programmatic trading even now. And programmatic trading is using AI to conduct even the purchasing of ad space online. More and more chains in the links of communication and marketing are being shaped by AI, and I think those are important changes. If we're thinking about propaganda, if we're thinking about reading and writing the world and interpreting the world, that's content that's important, and those are processes that are important to be accessed by students. Students should not just use cookies and or be used by cookies, but they should know about them and about geofencing and about how users are bucketed by marketing, about tagging and personalizing, about first and third party data, about funnel approaches and timing, and how the timing of their activities shapes in part the kinds of material that they're reading and their interactions with that material. Some new critical post-human questions we might ask for the identity curriculum include, how is this advertisement and its algorithm producing a version of me? What kind of bucket does this algorithm put me in, and what are the consequences? What choices do I have in interacting with this agent? And how could this algorithm contribute to racism, to classism, or to other forms of oppression? With that cheery note, I will leave you with my contact information, and we're going to move at this point to, as I'm going to change hats and move from presentation mode to moderator role, and we're going to take questions for the panel, okay? Thank you. They've given us this, this square question magic algorithm that we can toss out to somebody who has the first question. They can take them. You're ready to go? Fantastic. Here's the mic. Would you like the mic? Oh, that's a mic. Oh, there you go. Okay.
Please go ahead. That's okay, loud enough. I can hear you. No, under the MOU, at this point of time, only schools are covered. We will only concentrate on schools for Government of Andhra Pradesh.
Look forward for the inclusion of the higher education institutions and universities also.
Sure, we'll slowly and gradually, we'll come to that.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your valuable suggestion.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, panelists. It was really interesting. My question's for Don. You mentioned about the obstacle of academics, scientists particularly taking up the use of visualization, incorporation of art. Could you speak a little bit more about why you think those obstacles exist? Is it the only thing I could think of was, for example, the ability to evaluate 3D, where we're used to evaluating a graph and things
That's
like
right.
that.
That's exactly right. There's an inherent, well, everybody has an inherent bias toward the information that they've developed for years. And certainly the idea of graphs and data graphs are a standard way of seeing things. The notion of having a 3D, even a 3D graph is problematic. But when they get really into complex visualizations where you're really looking at a cell divide or some other phenomena that we can now visualize, their bias is based generally in their fear of easy deception. So it's not just accuracy, but it's just a matter of, since there's no, which again is why when I say it's entertainment industry based, they just go blank on me. It's because they need accurate measure units, and within visualization practices there's in 3D, they don't know quite how to standardize z-depth measurement, Cartesian measurements, and it is problematic for them. But for everybody else, it gives more information. It's just that the great concern always when you're sharing information is that it has to be accurate. So there is limitation in its actual implementation, but there's virtually no implication relative to its viability. It's just it has to be applied. So one of the processes we've been engaged in is to bring in those entertainment tools. One of the most important ones is called Side Effects Houdini, and it's a particle-based, procedural-based animation tool that is really just exceptional to anything that we would know from the scientific standpoint. So we've asked them to come and to help identify what the problems are in establishing accurate data measurement for them. And so the industries have to merge and find their own solutions. But it's largely biased, but it's biased based on trust and accuracy.
Yeah. My name is Jay Krishna. My question is to Mr. Manoj. Like you talked about excellent concept of your school discipline from the class standard 1 to 10th class. But I just would like to know like how we are able to map it to the existing curriculum, because most of the Indian schools are either follow state syllabus, ICSE or CBSE. I'm saying that this excellent thing, we are trying to do it in Andhra Pradesh for some time, but we face a lot of difficulties in convincing them how to map the curriculum with the way you did it. How you are able to do that?
The easiest for me is to invite you to Pune, and you will see that how we did it. We made it very simple actually. We don't duplicate knowledge. For example, I talked about farming. So if you have a lot of components which are taught to the children, class 1 also, what is living, non-living, plant, the science behind it, biotechnology part of it, computing part of it, we actually map the curriculum as close to as it is possible. And 40% of the learning actually happens outside the classroom by policy. So we teach only for 5 hours, and then we take 3 hours of activity-based lessons. When I say activity-based, they actually go to the farms and they have to play with the soil and water and all that. That's important because if you want to teach biotechnology or bioinformatics, they must know how the science of plants work. I forgot to tell you, we have one plant one child policy. So on the day of admission, every child has to plant a tree. And class 6th has been assigned the responsibility of developing a database, which we call botanical database. And then they swap their plants. So you will know about my plant and I'll take your plant. They do QR coding by themselves. So these are very simple exercises. I don't think you really need a lot of time for that. The biggest challenge that came was that what do you do students to do with Minecraft, for example? Can I do physics with Minecraft? Can I teach chemistry with Minecraft? And that's what I meant by parallel curriculum, because you have to define that curriculum where I know in advance that what am I teaching with Minecraft, which subject, what is the outcome. If that could be defined, I don't think these are the issues that, because I've been hearing about it for long, and that's the reason that we started this school, and it's 4 years. I think it's happened for good. If you talk about computing and coding, I read one of the interviews from a gentleman from Sweden, and he said that we teach C programming in 6th and 7th, and I was wondering that why we can't do this in India. We do that, and it's been very, very successful. And if you don't teach them coding and computing and you directly go to the world of robotics, I'm afraid that you are actually teaching anything else.
Mike.
So I'd like to add something which I forgot to share during my presentation, that while we are trying to do this particular initiative here in India through the program Adobe Digital Disha, very soon by early next year, we also want to get onto a collaborative platform where teachers of various schools who are using Adobe products in US are able to collaborate with teachers here in India. And when we talk about best practices of, international schools, maybe abroad, but why can't we have best practices here from our Indian schools and let the other countries adopt that? So I know it's going to be an uphill journey, but it's not impossible, and I'm sure with your support we should be able to drive that very soon. Thank you.
My question is for Garima. We are in the age where there is a lot of democratization and demonetization of software or technology for education happening all over the world. So software such as Adobe's software like Photoshop, like you said, Spark is an initiative where you are working with a certain set of schools through an MOU or other means, and so the students can get access to that as well as the education fraternity can use it.
Absolutely, you are bang on.
So my question is that will it be accessible to any students or only a certain set of students who are partnered with your organization on the certain set of terms and conditions?
So to answer your first question regarding Photoshop and other tools which are a part of our Adobe Creative Cloud, you'll be happy to know that something which is available at a commercial cost anywhere outside, it's almost 90% slashed down for education now. And yes, you have to write it to us. We'll see that how best you want to use it for your education, for learning outcomes of the students. And we don't want to just give away our software, the discounted software, but also give you content and teaching so that your teachers have the capacity to be able to deliver that at the school. So that's your question one. Number two, when you asked about Spark, Spark is open to all. We are happy to distribute licenses to whoever wants to use it, but we also want to ensure that they're using it in the right manner and what is the outcome that they want to have from that. So there is an alias, add@adobe.com, write into the program ID and take your free licenses for Adobe Spark Premium and start using it.
One of the challenges that we've seen in schools is that students have access to software inside their labs because maybe the school is partnered with a software company, or there is some program through CSR or some activities the students have got access inside their lab, but when they go back home they don't have access to the same software. And in my personal observation, I've seen a lot of students who can't even afford to spend 100 rupees on a software. I'm not talking about thousands, even 100 rupees for them to buy for a software. They're going into the roads piracy to access that. So it's a request, I think, on behalf of the education fraternity. I'm so sure a lot of educators out here would agree to this, that companies should take this forward and think of the last mile, like the student who's at the, on ground, especially in a country like ours, to be able to access all the software. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your concern, and you'll be happy to know that we have something known as named user license in Adobe. So if you use that, so it's like anytime, anywhere device learning for the students. So you're not just dependent on the desktop in which software is uploaded in your school, but you can also access it at home. You can use it on your mobile phones. You can, so it's a cloud-based application. You can access from anywhere, anytime, and it's secure, it's collaborative. You can actually, teachers can give you assignments on that. You can submit your assignments and you can actually see whether, what is the feedback that your teachers have given on those assignments. So all those features and that entire compatibility is available in Adobe Creative Cloud. So it is discounted. Spark is absolutely free of cost.
But Spark is not a tool by which I can create. Photoshop is the tool by which I can create. That's what digital making is done. Spark is just exactly it's like a tool where I can give a presentation. It's not creating anything.
You can actually create graphics in that. Maybe I can share a few projects which students have created, and they've been sharing it with me on mobile. I'll share that with you offline. But yes, you're right when it talks about content creation. So you have Creative Cloud, and we have special packages now for K-12 and for higher education, which are almost 90% slashed, and it's almost I would say, free of cost. There are different slabs to it. Maybe if you have a certain requirement, you can talk offline for your schools. But yes, the best interest of the students and educators. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to add into that a moment. We see within the very highest end applications that there are free installations. I'm with you. No, I know exactly what you're saying. I'm 100% with you. Subscription is a real issue for software, no matter how inexpensive it is still expensive, and it still is monthly or yearly or whatever. And that becomes a real issue in democracy of distribution. But oddly enough, with the most high-end applications, they are completely free and they're limited in their application, but they're downloadable and free. So it's an interesting dilemma that you point out.
It's because it's a cloud-based software and it's subscription-based. So there are, installations. You don't need to really upgrade your software every year. It comes automatically. So I think those are the advantages that we must look into.
We have time for about one or two more non-Adobe questions. No, I'm just kidding. What's it? Okay.
Invest. They expect schools to come forward for everything. So when we were to buy Cloud Campus Agreement for certain software, the cost was 3 lakh. So we thought that, the cost was for 1 year and for 2,500 users. So what I thought, if I'll call parents and I'll tell them, what if you are getting the software worth 16,000 rupees at just 200 bucks, because we as educational institution are getting a slash out price by 90%, and it will come to just 200 bucks per user. That's for a year. Will you mind spending that? Or because we want to be an ethical school, we don't want our kids to download pirated software and then open gateways to various malwares and viruses into their systems.
So they all will have authentic software. Using one ID and password, they can access it anywhere on any number of devices. They all were with us. But at the end, management decided not to take a penny from any child, but we want to give them this orientation that this is what happens. When your child at home asks you that I need 200 rupees or 300 rupees, an annual subscription for a website for which my teachers have told them, you come and you bang on the school, why can't school provide you subscription? So think it from that angle, that this is the age, this is one skill where all kids need to be well versed with. So this sort of investment. You are okay to invest in clothes, you are okay to invest in branded watches and all, then why not in software 200, 300 bucks per annum, which is good for your child. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we need to wrap up time-wise because of the, in order to be right by the next session. So I'm very sorry, but do you have a 20-second question?
This question is to Manoj. I really appreciate your leadership in education, how you're doing. Especially in a country like India, affordability and accessibility is a major issue. And when it comes to affordability, the major cause for any schools could be the real estate and the human resource that they are going. Right now, the technology is adding up to it. Now, for premium schools, international schools and global schools, things might work. But what could be a direction that, as a leader, that you would suggest for affordable schools?
We are launching a program called Bhavshyam, wherein the fee will be less than 1,000 rupees per year. And we are teaching only those things where these schools will not have access to these kind of, say for example, robotics or AI, machine learning. We will be able to reach out to them. There's always a way out. For example, somebody is talking about licensing. If you have to buy 4D Max or 3D Max, 4D Prime, it's expensive. But if I have to use Blender, it's free. At the end of it, people have to understand that coding is logic. It's not computing. So I think what we need to teach your children is coding and not really computing. Computing is, because I strongly feel that all technologies will change by the way the child comes from class 1 to class 5. He has to be trained for that. So we are working out on that, and I'll definitely like to share that as in when it starts. We are starting 2 projects very soon.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and no, we actually have to close, but I think the speakers well, we actually need to close the session to polite to the next session, but there are certainly people here who will take questions from.
Here, global pan is here. Everybody thinks about in the top level, high level research is going on. Directly you are dumped into root level. In the middle is teacher education programs are there, pre-service and in-service. You forget about, I'm a teacher educator, I'm an assistant professor, I'm a teacher educator for last 18 years. Last 18 years, I'm also roaming 2 to 3 countries, I'm also a specialist in comparative education. Everywhere, very few countries like developing countries, I'm not give the naming, but all the countries, especially in India, maybe madam is wholeheartedly give these softwares to the schools. Then what is about in Andhra Pradesh? It's around 650 teacher education institutes are there. Why don't you train them? Sure. Pre-service. Even in service also. You're directly dumped into in the schools, it's useless. As per my knowledge, and you can go through any surveys, or every day you can, in the newspapers also, you will get a different nonsense kind of. Every school have minimum infrastructure in India, in Andhra Pradesh, but there is no proper utilization because of there is no proper training for the teachers. They are the mediators, they are the coordinators. Please, it's my suggestion. If you are accept my suggestion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you everybody for coming. I'm sure all the panelists will take questions and context, so please feel free to come on up.